Welcome back to Debut Writers. In this episode, we chat with first time author Kate Hendrickson about her journey to self publishing her debut novel, Christmas Switch, coming out November 4th. We are going to dive into how she found an editor, tips for vetting professional help, and what she's learned along the way. Kate has been writing for blogs. In fact, that's how we met through Pensacola Moms Collective. Despite living in the same town and having a lot of the same friends, I thought that was interesting that we met through writing. So, Kate, I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thanks, Anne. I'm excited to be here.
So, what led you to choosing self-publishing path for your very first novel, Christmas Switch?
I really was interested in traditional publishing at first. I did a lot of research on all the different options. I queried my story out there to the world to see if there's any traditional publishers who would bite at it, and they did. I had a few bites and interests, which was really rewarding. But ultimately, I decided on self-publishing because of the timing. It's you. It kind of take from what I've learned in my one time doing this. It takes a little bit longer sometimes to traditionally publish a book, and you're on somebody else's timeline. Where with self-publishing, I was on my own timeline, and if I didn't meet my timeline, that was on me, not on somebody else. I also, with me having a holiday book, I only have a short window of time that I can really get it out there and market it. And so I didn't want to wait a whole another year to get it out there. So between the timing aspect and the having a little bit of control over that publishing process, that's really what led me to the self-publishing path.
Yes, and that is one of the biggest reasons when I'm talking to different authors that they choose self-publishing is that timing, like not wanting to. I think we talked about this the very first time you said you wrote a book. That was a big question we went over was that timeline and when do you want this out? Because it is a Christmas book. And you were like, I want it out this Christmas. And I was like, whoa, okay, we got to get moving.
And we did.
I know. And I'm so proud of you because I feel like you have really worked so hard and diligently but you also, like, just so the listeners know, you quit your big time corporate job and this has become your job now, so that's a very different feel. What kind of led you to making that huge life decision?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I actually started writing this book about 3 years ago. I had some medical leave. I had to take some time off of work and just started to write this fun story, and it happened to be around Christmas time. So that's where my mindset was. And so I started writing, and I got about 3 or 4 chapters in, and then I went back to work. And you can see behind me, I have kids and a family and all of those things. So life just got busy, and I put it down. And so it wasn't until maybe a year and a half, 2 years later, I thought, man, I really want to write again. In the meantime, there were some stresses going on with that my big girl corporate job, and just made a decision that I needed to shift gears and focus on the things that I'm passionate about. And so I left that job, and the first thing I did was took a creative writing course. And before I picked anything up, I just took at our local college, I took a course and got back in that creative mindset again. And so I even started a whole different story at that time. And then ultimately came back around to this Christmas story that I had started years prior and fell back in love with these characters again. And so just really leaned into this fun new journey for myself, an adventure for myself. So I am doing a little bit of work outside of the writing right now, but I do get to spend a lot of time focusing on the book and the writing because it is very time consuming.
And that is really important for a self-published author to have that time. A lot of self-published authors that I talk to that have had success, it becomes a full-time job for them with not just the writing process, but everything that comes after. And that's kind of the start of this season is that first step after you write your first draft. So after you've just finished your first draft, you type the end and you're like feeling so
Yes.
accomplished, you've done it. And then maybe you picked up Debut Writers and you listened to how that's just the first step. I'm pretty sure I told you that though when we
Yes.
met. So when I was kind of like outlining to you all the editing and that process, did you feel overwhelmed or were you just kind of like, I'm going to break it down into steps?
There was that initial moment of this is so exciting. I wrote a book. And I was one draft in, right? And so I let that excitement sit for a little while before I did
Good,
anything with it,
good.
right? I didn't touch it again. I didn't look at it again. I just was excited that I had a chapter one and I had the end, like, and that was it. And then you and I, of course, went out to dinner a little while later after I had let that settle, that excitement settle, and talked about, okay, now what's next? And that's where you shared that now somebody else has to read it, right? Like somebody else needs to put their eyes on it other than you. And that was very scary. I mean, it is like you were putting your heart out there for someone else. It's was nerve wracking, and you were one of the first people to read it. So you read my first draft, and then my mom also read my first draft. So I kept it in a very safe space in the beginning to get feedback from people that I knew they cared about me, but also were going to be willing to tell me the truth, right? And that was really important to me as well. So that was where I started with the first edit draft. The first round of edits was a small group of people that I was close to.
Yes, and I think that that's really important, like what you said, someone you trust, because especially as a first-time writer, I think I talked about this on the last episode. The first person I ever showed my writing to was an agent at a pitch event, and she didn't even look at it for 5 seconds before she was like, "Has anybody else looked at this?" And I was like, no."
Yeah.
So having those people you trust to like really just kind of validate, yes, you've got something here. This is something worth pursuing, something worth kind of diving a little bit deeper into. That I think is the biggest point of those first beta readers. And so finding people that you really trust is important. But then you've got to like, we always joke that like your mom can't be your editor. Like
Right.
you've got to then at some point get that professional eye on your work, somebody who's in the industry. So how did you go about, because I know a lot of authors find that task difficult because it's not cheap and it's time consuming and you're really putting your book in somebody else's hands that you don't know, that you don't trust. And so how do you vet that person to know, hey, yeah, let me just drop 5 grand on you to like help me fix my book?
Right. So I will say I didn't even get to that point until I was around the third or fourth draft of the book. Right. And
Oh, God.
so I did not, because it is costly, right? For me, I needed to wait a little bit before I kind of, and I had a little bit more polished version of the story before I hired a professional editor. So once I had, Anna had you read it, my mom read it, and I will say, my mom was an English teacher for years and years and years and years, and she edited and proofread all of my essays in college and things. So it was only fitting that she was the first reader, but at the same time, she wasn't my professional editor. And so you guys gave me your feedback, very valuable feedback, honest, truthful feedback. And then I listened to it. So you have like, like
That's a
on
big
Microsoft
one.
Word or whatever, they have the read aloud. So I made shifts and changes and adjustments based on your recommendations. And you don't always have to take everybody's recommendations too. Keep that in mind. But I made some changes and then I listened to it back. And made more changes. So I was almost my own second editor.
Well, not listening to the advice that we gave you. You like
Yes.
actually, because that's what it sounded like a minute ago, but you actually physically like turned on Google Speak and
Yes.
had the book like audio read to you. That's so important. I
Yes.
used to read my versions out loud,
Okay.
but that's
Okay,
a lot
that's
better.
not
I like
true.
your way better.
But yes, I'd use like the Google Read Aloud and it read it back to me. And I would pause it and like make a change or adjustment right then and there, like as I'm going through it, shifting and editing and changing. And then I had two more beta readers read it. So I had two friends who are my audience. So my audience for my book is moms, probably 30 plus, age range, 30 and older. people who like Hallmark movies, people, like that's my audience. And so I had two friends who are like in their 30s and 40s with kids who deal with the stresses of Christmas. And I had them read it over the Christmas holidays, which was important, so they could easily get into that mindset. So they read it last Christmas, and I was able to get their feedback. And I told them, I said, I just want storyline, right? Like, is there something that doesn't make sense? And I gave them very specific things I was looking for. Is there something in the characters that you don't understand, or you don't understand why this person's connecting or relating to this person in a certain way, right? I wanted their feedback around the characters themselves, the storyline, and just anything that felt off or wrong. And I will say they've caught a couple of things, like I had an original different last name for my characters, and I changed it. Well, I missed a couple. Oh. And so my original last name for the characters was Sullivan. It ended up being Crawford, and one of them said, "Who the heck is Sullivan?" And I was like, "Thank you for catching that," right? So sometimes you're just like reading and looking and at things so closely that you miss some of that stuff. So they were able to catch some of that before I even got to a point where I was ready. And then I made my changes and edits and adjustments. And then I think I was ready around that time to hire a professional editor. And I came to you and said, what do I do?
Well, and that's so great that you understood your target audience. We talk about that in the first season, like what to know before you ever start writing your book. Having a true understanding of who your target audience is going to be, because this is when it wraps back around. Mm-hmm. Even as early as that editing process, finding those readers who are going to be your target audience. That was so smart that you did that. Hooray for you.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, and so I remember you coming to me and we talked about like professional editing,
mm-hmm.
and there are sites you can use.
Yes.
I think, what did you end up using?
I ended up using Reedsy. Am I even saying that right?
Yeah, you said it right. I said it wrong.
Okay. Which is incredible. I mean, I'm so glad you told me about it, because they have professional editors on there. They have interior designers, cover designers, marketing people. I mean, like anything you could ask for a self-publishing author, it's there for you. And then what I learned is how much these individuals are vetted through their, so you know that they're true professionals that have been vetted through the site. And then you're able to search for people that are in your genre, and you can see edits and other things, or cover designs, or whatever you're looking for, or specifically edits. You can see books that they've edited and where, kind of their resume. And price point. You can actually narrow it down by price point too. So this is my first book as a self-publishing editor, I didn't necessarily I wasn't necessarily, it's okay, you can keep that. It wasn't necessarily, possible for me to spend $5,000, but I was willing to spend about $1,000, right? And so I needed to decide where I was comfortable.
I really like how that site does that, because that is a huge difference. I mean, they've got editors on there that have worked for big 5 publishing companies, or they still do, or they've worked on, Lisa Jewell is one of my favorite thriller authors. I mean, they've worked on her books, and her editors are on there. And so you can really tailor it to how much money do I have to spend during this process. And I think that is another such important thing that we talk about in the first season too, is financially what you need to set aside. This is the first step of that financial commitment that you're really making as an author into this editing process. And even whether you're self-publishing or trying to get a literary agent or going straight to a publishing company, you can't really skip this process. This process is really important. Throughout this season, we talk to multiple professionals, and they will all tell you need to get professionally edited before you do anything.
I totally agree. And the nice thing was I was able to, I found 5 or 6 that I was interested in, and I was able to reach out to them, and they were able to send me a quote and send me, just information about them, and just have a conversation and get to know them to see if we would even click. Because I think that's kind of important too, to have, I want someone that we can be open and honest, and as we go back and forth. So I had 5 or 6. I got quotes back from had conversations with about 3 or 4 of them, and then I narrowed it down to 2. And ultimately came down to who could get the job done the fastest when I narrowed it down the two. So that's another piece though. One of the editors said, I'm booking out 3 months out, and the other one said, I'm booking about a month out. And I'm like, I'm gonna go with the one because I really liked both of them. The one that was booking a little further out, I'm keeping her kind of in my back pocket for future books because we live in the South. She lives in the South, and I thought she would understand like mannerisms and wording and the way we say things and tone and that kind of thing a little bit because my story is set in Fairhope, Alabama, and South Alabama. So, ultimately, I didn't go with her because of timing, but I definitely have I have her name off to the side if I ever need her, want to seek her out again.
For the next book, I'm gonna reach out to her a little bit earlier.
Yes, a little bit earlier. But then I will say the one I ended up with, she was incredible. And what I loved about her too, I said I need line editing, but also with this being my first book, if there's any like developmentally, if there's anything glaring at you, you are the expert in this. Like, would you let me know? And she said, absolutely, 100%. And so she had a couple of those little notes. She did the line edits. She also pointed out
For
things.
editors, side note to like not point it out, I feel like.
I know. She also, which I loved and made me feel great as a new writer, or new author. I've been writing for years, but as a new author putting out my first book, she would put little comments that said like, I love this dialogue, or this, I love the way you laid out this scene, and so she would have little comments in there, which was really nice to have.
That's so important. When I was doing some training with an editor, trying to, learning the craft, that was something she was really big about, making sure you point out those positive things because you're about to drop a lot of negative. And on something somebody has spent a ton of time on. I mean, what'd you say you were on like this was not your first version. So you like
No.
this was maybe your fourth or fifth. So you've put a lot of time and energy into this. And by this point you're like, okay, I'm feeling really good about this. And so to get nothing but red marker, this is not really because it's not, it's on the computer, but to get the feeling of like, oh my gosh, everything's a mess. I have to fix everything. It can be so overwhelming and daunting. Like, so when you were vetting these editors, did they do like a little sample edit of like a certain amount of pages for you so you could understand their style?
They did, and they were all different actually. One said, "Give me a chapter in the middle of the book." One said, "Give me 1,000 words," right, or whatever it is. So they all had their different requests of what they could do to kind of show me the way their style. And I actually only asked for that from the last two that I had kind of narrowed it down to, because I don't want somebody to do work on if I know if I'm probably not going to pick.
That is very decent of you.
So yes, I narrowed it down to the two. They both did a fantastic job, and so really it came down to timing.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. So, as you were working with the editor, how did that process go? Like, what if you're self-publishing author, or you're even just hiring a professional editor for that next step? How did that feel? Like, did she just do the edit and then send it back to you, and it was like, thank you, goodbye, or was there back and forth with this editor?
She, there was a little bit of back and forth, and she had sent it to me, a little bit of it in pieces actually. So I think she kind of chunked it up into thirds, and I got it back the first third of it. So that way she's like, you can start working while I'm continuing to work so we can stop. And so that was also really nice too, that I wasn't like sitting there waiting for her to get through the whole book. So she sent back like the first third, and then that way it opened up that conversation if I had questions around any of her comments or anything. We didn't have a lot of back and forth, but the door was always open. I felt very comfortable that if I did have a question or needed clarification on something, she was there to help me.
That's good. I really feel like that's how that process should be, and the vetting of the editor should be. You should get samples and get to know the person because you are kind of entering into a little relationship with them for part time with your book.
Yes.
You're at least a work agreement at the very least. Like you're contracting out this work to her, and I think that that's a very different feeling hiring your own editor and going through that process versus signing on with a publishing company and then using one of their editors. They edit the book, And I mean, sometimes like I didn't even get a final read of my book with my publisher.
Yeah.
They gave me the editor's feedback. I never met with the editor. They just gave me the editor's feedback. They told me to make the changes. I made the changes, and then that was it. And then they moved forward. Maybe they had her read it again. Maybe they did. I don't even know. So it is a very different process hiring your own editor, and I think it's a process that every author would benefit greatly from going through.
I completely agree. And now, so I follow her on Instagram now. Her name's Bryn Donovan.
I was
She
about to say,
does
can you tell
these.
us who it is?
Yeah. Her name's Bryn Donovan. She's fantastic. She does like the sweet little stories and Hallmarkies and she writes for women, like women's stories and things. And she's also an author, which I think was important too. That she has her own stories and books, and so I follow her and I want to read her stories, and so it's just like I've built that relationship, which is nice.
Yes, and that's again a relationship as an author you can have. I met an author at Writer Fest, a conference I go to and speak at in Nashville, and I get to go again this year, and I'm like really excited about it. But I met this author, and she has self-published 50 books in the thriller genre, and her whole like income for her family is supported by these books. Like, and it's just she's like my dream, and I'm just like,
Yes.
okay, how did you get there?
I know,
And
that's my dream too.
yeah, and she was like, I have a very strict schedule and a very strict process. It is the same for every book, and she uses the same editor for almost all of her books. She said every now and again, if the book was a little bit different or she was kind of going out of the space, she'd have maybe took to a different editor, or if that editor was busy. But she's like, I developed a relationship with this editor, and so she knows when I'm sending her my book. She knows the way we work really well together, kind of like a second marriage, like a
Yeah,
work wife.
yeah. No, I love that, and that's the dream. So hopefully
I know.
we're there one day. Where
I
we're
know.
just,
Right.
um,
So, okay, so you're really deep into this process. I mean, you're months out of,
yes.
the publishing date. So, looking back, is there anything I just have to say, like, I think you've like just flown through this entire process too. Like you have really kept on top of everything. Like when you reached back out to me and you were like, "Hey, so now I'm ready for this." I was like, "What? How are you ready for what?" I, I was like, oh my gosh, I was so jealous because I was like, God, if I could just, be that disciplined and like get through my stuff that quickly, I'd probably have a lot more books out by now. But is there anything during that process you would do differently? Like you like feel like, oh, I learned that mistake and I'm not going to do that again.
Um, I would say I would maybe expand my beta reader group a little bit. So, um, well, I had, what was it, round three, I said, where I had gotten my friends who were in my audience. Maybe find somebody who's not necessarily a close friend, but in that reader
Genre
demographic that
space,
I'm looking
yeah.
for. And then also maybe expand that out to a few more people that make that circle a little bit bigger. I think it can only help. And seeing where they align. I think that would be really exciting
Oh
to
yeah.
see because I had two people read it at the same time. And if I have five, maybe, then they could, I can see like they both had the same question around this scene, or right, or they have both had the same question about this character or recommendation or whatever it may be. And so that would be really cool to see if there's multiple people who have similar recommendations. But when you only have two, that makes it more difficult. So I would probably expand my beta reader circle a little bit. I would also have a physical copy on paper sooner and read it off of that, because I will say I have read it off the computer or sent it or been back and forth or listened to it out loud many times after the professional edits, and then I went in and made my edits. I re-listened to it again on the read aloud and then I sent it to my, and I know we're not talking about interior design, but I sent it to my interior
Oh,
designer,
that's an
and
important part too. Yeah.
yeah, and she sent it back to me, the pages look like physical book pages and how it's going to be laid out. And I actually like read it on physical paper and went, oh no, I see things that I didn't see on the
That's
screen, or I
interesting.
didn't
Yeah.
hear, like, in the read aloud. So I think I would print a physical copy, which I know it's a lot of ink. Again, more money, more time. But I'd have a like physical copy of it sooner than the last copy, and then I'm going, oh no.
Yes, and that's something that but it's hard though because until it's formatted, you're not really gonna see it in that space.
Yeah.
So you could always like go use a program like Ingram Sparks because it'll format the interior for you and then send you a proof, just
Yeah.
as like kind of like a soft run on the formatting. But I agree, like I've done in the past when I started printing it, I would read it out loud to myself, or I would print it and read it only because it would go so much quicker. And I would make notes of what needed to be changed. But of course, this is like a few versions in too, you know? I
Yeah.
would make notes of like what needed to be changed. And then as I go onto the computer to make those, and I go through my notes, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. By the time I got to the end of the book, this actually didn't needed to be changed. Like there was a point I had this in here, or it wasn't supposed to make sense because it was like a red herring or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
And so it can be daunting and time consuming to go through all these reads and these edits, which is why when people ask me, what's the number one advice? I want to write a book. Like, what would you recommend? Like, what would you say? And I'm like, you better really love what you want to write about
Yes.
and what you write about because you're going to have to spend so much time on it. So, how many times have you read this book? And it's not even out yet.
I mean, probably a dozen,
Okay.
probably, I would say. And I think really, I wish I would have physically printed it out and read it sooner, but I wouldn't change a thing. And I love these characters. They're now family to me, which is
Yes.
so weird to say out loud.
So, how are you feeling about putting it out there into the world? Like, we're approaching your publication date. Like, you're finally going to like put it. I mean, this is such a big monumental step. And as a writer who's an author who's been there, it's like even when it went out, I was like, no, 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 wait, 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 wait,
I want it back. I want it back.
wait, wait, come back.
I am excited but terrified at the same time. I mean, I feel like I mean, just like giving it to you and my mom for the very first read, and I said I'm like giving you guys a piece of my heart. Now I'm giving a piece of my heart to like the world. um,
And
and
being judged,
so
like judged very harshly too. Like
yes,
people
yes,
love judging authors.
they do. And I completely wrote this story keeping in mind I wanted it to be a sweet story. I wanted it to make you feel happy around the holidays. I wanted it to put you in a festive mood. I mean, those were my goals around what this story was going to like how the story was going to be told. So I feel like I keep like telling people that like it's a sweet story. It's just gonna make you happy. Like I keep like
Well,
feeling the need to like say that.
it's also important because, like, when you pick up a Christmas book, it is a very different writing style. Like, when you watch a Hallmark movie, you're not watching, an
Gone
adventure
girl.
movie. You're not watching Gone Girl. Like, you're
Right.
you're not watching like, what's the Oppenheimer project or whatever that was?
Oh
Like
yes.
these big
Yeah.
movies that are like getting nominated. Like, you're like, that is not this book. This is
That's not what
not
this is.
like the
Yeah.
next, like, To Kill a Mockingbird. You're like, this is just a sweet, like you said, Hallmark based type of writing and story around Christmas to make everybody feel good. And honestly, again, since I was one of the first readers, I can't wait to read the final version because that'll be so cool. But it's fun. I mean, it's like a really great twist on like the husband wife relationship at Christmas time. And it actually, I love telling this story about your book because it actually inspired me to like host a Christmas party for the first time in a long time because I got
Oh,
such the bug and I was like, oh, I'm gonna host this like Bad Moms Pajamas Christmas party, and now like we do it every year. Now it's like a thing, and it's one of my favorite parties. But I just remember calling you at one point too after I read the book and being like, "Do you really do all of this at Christmas time? Like, wow, this is a lot of stuff."
yes. Okay, one, when you told me you threw a Christmas party because my book inspired you and just like put you in the spirit and the mood to do that, the joy that brought me, you have no idea. Like, if your book like influences somebody in any way, shape, or form, I mean, how cool is that? And
Yeah.
so hopefully I'll see that happen more this Christmas as it comes out. But yes, I am not the main character, but there are some parts of her that are similar. um, and just like a real quick, because I feel like we're like teasing people on what it's about, but not really telling them what's it about. But it's just about a husband and wife who switch Christmas duties. And so she's super stressed out in type A and she wants the perfect Christmas, and he's a little bit more laid back. And so he offers to take on all of the Christmas responsibilities. So they make a deal where she does his Christmas jobs and he does hers. And so a lot of fun things happen, and they have to get through Christmas.
Actually, like, lets him do some of that stuff and like
Yeah.
really kind of like throws him to the wolves. And,
Yeah.
like, doesn't even mention it. Like, it just like comes up. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know how she does that. Like, for being like the main character is clearly type A.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
like for her to even be able to like relinquish it the way she does in the book, I think is like a big step for that character.
Yeah. Yes. I agree. I'm not sure if I could do that.
And it's funny because when you originally told me that, because you go in with this mentality that like, oh, my husband's not doing anything because I'm doing so much, I'm doing everything, and how often do wives feel like that? You know, especially mothers feel like we're taking on the brunt of like all the stuff that needs to be done with the kids and the house and that kind of thing. So even playing into like that ideal of let's, just walk a mile in my shoes, just like live a day in my shoes. I tried to do that with my husband one time. I was feeling really overwhelmed. The kids were young, and I was like, I do everything, and he was like, okay, let's make a list.
Yes.
Well, that almost ended my marriage. No, I'm just kidding. But it did end me talking about how I did everything because his list was longer, and that was pretty embarrassing. I was like, no way your list is longer than me. But he was doing so many things that I didn't even notice he was doing. And I think that the book brings that to light too, that
Yes.
idea of there was all these that, she was like, well, all you do is this. And it's like, well, no, because
Right.
your turkey just doesn't show up,
Right.
they just don't end up on the house, like they just don't end up on the yard for me to put on the house. Like I have to go get them out of the
Yes.
attic, which was funny.
Yes.
The tree doesn't just show up in the living room, like all
Right.
these little things where it's like, you really don't understand. So it's such a great, especially at the Christmas time, to read your book and sit back and have appreciation for the people around you and all the things that they do to support you.
Okay, that's exactly what I hope people get out of it.
We'll clip that clip and be like, this is the new tagline, the new
Yes.
promo for the book.
Perfect.
So, all right. So tell all of our listeners how they can find you and when they're going to get this book in hand.
Yes, absolutely. So on my website will be all the links to purchase it or ebook it or however you like to read. It's www.kate-hendrickson.com.
And we will have that in the comments, and we will have that linked on our newsletter.
Cool. Thank you. And then I'll have a newsletter. So as new fun holiday stories come out, I'll let everybody know, because I hope to continue to do this process over and over and be one of those people who have 50 self-published books out there in the world. So please, sign up for that. And then I'm also on Instagram. So it's KW Hendrickson, and you can follow me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And this has been such a great conversation. I think there's so many authors out there that will get so much from this episode just because self-publishing is gaining so much traction. And again, like you said, like having that control over your book, being able to pick the editors, the book covers you wanted to work with, and also that time control. Because I remember when we first met and you were like, well, I want to put out a book every Christmas. And I was like, well, good luck. But now I look at you and I think that she's doing it. Like, it's totally possible. Like, next Christmas, we will meet again and
Yes.
you will have another book. And like now, my pajama party every Christmas is going to also become your book launch every Christmas. Like, those
Love
are
it.
going to be the two
Yes, it will.
parties I have every Christmas.
Perfect.
And it's going to be great. But
Yes.
so next week, we are actually going to be talking to Deborah, who she's been on the podcast before, but she has been an editor for 20 years. And so she's really going to talk to us about what you should expect when working with an editor. So make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and our newsletter on Substacks. And don't miss out on listening now to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, and Spotify. So thank you so much for listening. And Kate, thank you again so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
This was great. Thanks.